Hey, I'm Osas Omere and welcome to my channel. If you're a young person who is feeling lost, unsure or struggling with where you are headed, you are not alone. I've been there, and that is why I'm sharing my personal stories to show you that no matter where you start, you have the power to rise above it. Today, I'm going to share a bit about my life, how I came from a place of uncertainty to where I am now, and I hope my journey can inspire you to keep pushing forward, even when things seem impossible. I was born on January 1981 in St. Philomena Hospital in Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria. And my journey started in a way that I could never have imagined. My dad went to the United States after impregnating my mother. After he left, my mother gave birth to me in 1981. He then told her not to wait for him because he was no longer interested in her. So, my mother, with no other option, made a difficult decision to send me to live with my maternal grandparents, with her parents in the village. I was just a baby at that time, so I didn't really understand the weight of the situation. But then, I knew I was loved. Growing up, I was surrounded by my grandparents, uncles and aunts in the village. And even though village life was hard, I always felt the warmth of family around me. My mom later married and went on to have 8 other children with her husband. And my dad went on to have 10 other children with 5 different women. But for me, I'm the eldest on both sides of the family. I was always aware, even as a child, that my situation was different from others. While my parents moved on with their lives, I was left with my grandparents in a remote village. I didn't get to know my father until I was 8 years old. Growing up, I didn't know much about him. To be honest, it was hard to understand why my dad was so far away. It could have been a better experience if he was there with me, but I made the best of it. My mother, however, visited me often in the village. Even though life in the village was tough, I still have fond memories of that time. From a young age, I had to work hard. I would go to the farm, work my own portion, and help fetch water from the river. It wasn't easy, especially at such a young age, but it taught me the value of hard work and self-reliance. I left the village when I was 8 years old, and though the memories are missed, I carried them with me as part of my story. I didn't realize how much those early lessons would shape who I become. Looking back, I can say it was full of love, hard work, and growth. But there was always a part of me wondering what it would have been if my father had been there. But life doesn't always go as planned, and I learned that it is not about what you are giving, it's about what you do with it. My paternal grandfather of blessed memory was the father I knew then. I still kind of consider him my father to date. When I was 8 years old, my stepmom, a Black American, came from Alabama with my father to visit Nigeria. During their visit, they took me from the village to live with my paternal grandmother in Benin City. My father and stepmom stayed for a few weeks, but after that, they returned to the United States, leaving me with my grandmom. It was an overwhelming experience for me. I didn't know what to make of it. I had been living in the village surrounded by my grandparents, uncles, aunties, and suddenly I was in a completely different world. At first, I was devastated. I missed the village life. Everything felt unfamiliar. I missed my grandparents, home, the people I had grown up with, and the peaceful life I had there. Even though my grandmother loved me, I was surrounded by family, my dad's family, I felt lost because I was not used to them. The city was loud, fast, and so different from the village life I knew. I cried for months, unable to adjust to the changes. I remember when anyone from my mother's side of the family would visit, I was clinging to them, begging them to take me back to the village with them. It felt like I didn't belong in this new world. I was caught between two places, and neither one felt like home. It wasn't until later that my cousin, Queen, who was much older than me, helped me to adjust. She became like a second mother to me, offering comfort and guidance during those early months of confusion. She gave me the emotional support I needed and helped me cope with the new environment. But despite Queen's support, I still acted out in anger. I got into a lot of trouble, fighting with others, and even stealing from my grandmom in some occasions. I didn't fully understand it at the time, but deep down, I was hurting. I just wanted to hurt them back. My father and my stepmom for taking me away from the only family I knew. My father wasn't around. He had already left with my stepmom, and I felt abandoned in a world that felt so foreign to me. It was a confusing time, but it taught me that pain, though hard to bear, often leads us to find a way to heal. I grew up with a lot of ups and downs. As a child, I faced the challenges of growing up in a village, but I've always dreamed of something more. During my childhood, while living with my grandmom, I went to several schools. We were primary school, one of a group of schools, Edo College. One time, I went to Broadway group of schools, but I finally ended up at Word of Faith, where I finished my secondary school. All these schools, all in Benin City. But life was never a straight path. It was in those early years that I learned the importance of resilience and how to keep going, even when things weren't easy. My secondary school years weren't a walk in the park, especially when I went to a boarding school where bullying was common. Still, I never gave up on the ideas that education was my ticket to a better life. It was hard, but I kept going. In 2000, I made into the Bruce Ali University, Ekpoma, where I studied public administration. It was a proud moment for me. Being able to attend university felt like a step closer to achieving the dreams I've always held onto for so long. I graduated in 2005, but life after university wasn't any easier. In fact, the struggles was just beginning. In 2007, my life took a drastic turn when my father wrongfully accused me of something I didn't do. He claimed that I stole some of his printing machines and beat him up with my friends. An absolute lie. I had never been an irresponsible boy, and I had never even sworn at my father, not even once. Yes, I was stubborn and still stubborn at times, but I've always respected him. Yet, despite this, he decided to have me arrested. It felt like the world was crumbling around me. I had been through a lot in my life, but this was different. Being arrested by your father, it was painful. I spent 2 weeks at SCG police station with no evidence to back my father's accusation. I was locked up, and it seemed like there was no way out. But the divisional police officer, or commonly called DPO, at the station, saw the injustice in my case and told my father that he couldn't just keep me locked up without evidence. So my father decided to move the case to the criminal investigation department, where people accused of serious crimes were heard, people who hadn't been sentenced yet. I spent another 2 weeks there in a place that felt like a nightmare with dangerous criminals. It was one of the worst time of my life. It was at my lowest point. But then my stepfather, Mr. Yudagboyi Egage of blessed memory, with my mother and some of our relations, came to my rescue and bailed me out after many difficulties. My stepfather was the one who gave me hope when I thought I had none left. The police escorted me back to my father's house and told me to pack my things. They then told me that I was never to come within 20 yards of the house again. That moment, as painful as it was, marked a turning point in my life. I had no home. I was homeless. At that moment, I felt like everything I had known has been taken from me. I was at rock bottom. But that moment also sparked something inside of me. I realized that if I was going to survive, I needed to take control of my own life. I didn't know how I was going to get through it, but I knew I had to keep going. I refused to let that define me. And from that point forward, I made it my mission to rise above the struggles and create a better life, no matter what life throws at me. So after being thrown out of my father's house, I had to go live with one of my uncles, my mom's younger brother. Call him Uncle Robusa. In his one room, face me, I face you rented house. Face me, I face you in Nigeria, it means a situation where a tenant occupies a single room with no living room, and he shares a toilet, a bathroom, and kitchen with other tenants, even with the other 20 tenants in the house. So I was living in this face me, I face you with my uncle. Life was tough, but the real shock came a few weeks later. My girlfriend found out she was pregnant 2 weeks after being thrown out of my father's house. It felt like the lowest point of my life, having no home, no direction, and now a child on the way. But despite not having any idea how I would take care of her or the baby, I told her to keep the baby. I wasn't ready to be a father, but knew I had to step up. My world was already falling apart, but somehow I knew this was a moment that could change everything. I decided to leave her with her parents after I went to introduce myself to her family in the company of my mom's side of the family to claim responsibility for the pregnancy. So I did what we call an introduction. It wasn't the ideal situation, but I had to keep moving. I left Benin and relocated to Lagos to live with my aunt Patricia and her family. Lagos was a whole new world, and adjusting to the pace of life there wasn't easy. But I knew I had to make it work. In Lagos, I traveled every day from Ikotun to Allen Avenue in Ikeja. That's about an hour journey if you are driving. But with the Lagos traffic, it was often longer than 1 hour and a half. And often I got stuck in traffic for hours. I took 3 buses each way to get to work. To help my friend, Samson Irabo was managing a cyber cafe. It was a tough life, but Samson was one of the people who helped me survive those early months. It ensured I had something to do and wasn't completely lost. Bright Irabo, another close friend, was another person who made those early months bearable for me in Lagos. They were the ones who gave me a sense of purpose when everything felt like it was falling apart. I worked with them, helped them in the cyber cafe, and without their support, I probably would have gone back to Benin in frustration, feeling like a failure. But even as I tried to make a living in Lagos, I couldn't escape the financial struggles. I had started forest trading, hoping it would be my way out. I paid a guy who taught me how to trade forests. At first, I made some money and it felt like I was on the right path. But then I started to trade for others, and while I was making money initially, the pressure began to build up because I began to trade with so much capital. But before long, I lost everything. The money, the confidence, it all disappeared. I ended up in a huge debt. I lost all my clients' money, people I was trading for, including one of my in-laws I was living with. I was too afraid to tell him. For over 3 months, I borrowed money to pay him his supposed returns from the trading. It was a crushing experience, but I wasn't ready to give up. I had come too far. Even though I was failing, I learned something important. Success doesn't come without its share of losses. But it's those losses that teach you the most about you, who you are, and how much you are willing to fight for your future. At this point, I had a son and his mother to think about. The pain from my failed forest trading experience weighed heavily on me. I felt defeated, and the pressure to provide for my family became overwhelming. I then made the difficult decision to relocate back to Benin so I could be closer to my family. I rented a face me, I face you room in Benin and moved in with my girlfriend and son. I call her my girlfriend because then I haven't paid her bride price. It was far from ideal, but I did everything I could do to make ends meet. I took on any odd job I could find. I went with my stepdad to spray farms against insects. I worked with one of my cousins, Nusa, doing artwork for his clients. I helped my uncle Orobusa with his generator repair business. I work as a legbuke. A legbuke in Benin is a day laborer helping with construction work, especially building construction. If there was a job to be done, no matter how small, I took it. Anything to keep us going. I also tried finding a regular job, but opportunities were scarce, and the jobs I did find didn't pay nearly enough to support my family. That's when I made the tough decision to go for my National Youth Service Corps, popularly called NYC. That's a 1-year program that every Nigerian graduate is expected to serve in. I saw it as my best chance to improve my employability and increase my chances of finding a good job. I was posted to Nasarawa State in the middle belt of Nigeria, leaving my wife and son behind with no guaranteed means of support. That was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I hope that the small salary from the program will be enough to take care of myself and also support them from afar. But it was very clear very quickly that the little stipend wasn't nearly enough. Every month, I sent as much as I could to them, but it was never close to enough. However, during my service year, I was fortunate to meet two incredible people, Simple Iniobong and Ijoma Emeli Chukwu. Simple and I shared a room together, and Emily lived in the same block. We cooked together, shared what we had, and supported one another. They were way off better than me. Without them, the salary from the NYC program wouldn't have been enough for me to survive, let alone send anything back home. They were the angels sent to help me during one of the hardest periods of my life. Just as Samson and Bride had been my angels when I was in Lagos. After completing my service year in February 2009, I returned to Benin to build my family. I managed to land a government job in the ICT department, but the pay was disheartening. Just 19,000 naira a month. It was barely enough to survive on. And it was clear that the road ahead was still going to be a struggle. But I knew one thing for sure. Giving up was never an option. Even though the pay was small, the work kept me going. And I kept looking for ways to improve, to build a better future for my family. In 2010, my girlfriend came to me with some shocking news. She was pregnant again, but this time with triplets. At first, I thought she was joking, but after 3 different scans confirmed it, I was left in a state of disbelief. Triplets? How was I going to cope with this on a 19,000 naira a month salary? I had barely enough to get by, let alone support 3 babies. The reality of the situation hit me hard. But then I had started dabbling in making money online, writing freelance articles. While it helped a little, it wasn't consistent enough to cover the overwhelming costs that came with having triplets. In addition to my first boy. And in a country like Nigeria with no government support for situations like mine, the road ahead seems bleak. The thought of raising triplets with no financial stability weighed heavily on me. But despite the uncertainty, I knew I had to keep going for the sake of my family. In January 2011, my wife gave birth to our beautiful triplets at Stella Obasanjo Hospital in Benin City. It was a blessing, but also a massive struggle. The cost of a C-section, the hospital bills, and the care the babies needed were astronomical. But somehow, with a lot of help from my colleagues, friends, and even people I didn't know well, we were able to cover the operation fees and the huge expenses. I can't even remember everyone who helped, but I will forever be grateful for their kindness and support. The babies were kept in an incubator for a few weeks, and we prayed they would be okay. Finally, after weeks of uncertainty, they were released to go home, but just when I thought life couldn't be harder, tragedy struck. A few months later, my first son, King Osamudiamen, tragically drowned. He was so young, and that loss still haunts me to this day. Losing him was a pain unlike any I've ever had. My heart was shattered, and it felt like I had nothing left to give. The birth of our triplets in January 2011 was a blessing, but the pain that followed was almost unbearable. My wife had already gone through so much in life, but losing our first son King Osamudiamen, had been the most excruciating pain of all. She was devastated by his death, and the agony was overwhelming. I truly believe that if not for the triplets, she might have taken her own life out of grief. The loss of King left a hole in her heart that was hard to heal. When King passed, life felt like it had no meaning. My wife and I went through an immense amount of grief, and while we were both struggling, it was clear she was in a far darker place than I was. She couldn't bear the pain of losing him. King has been there for her and a source of encouragement during some of the most difficult parts of her life, especially when I was serving in faraway Nasarawa State during my National Youth Service Corps. They had endured so much together. Somehow we made it through that terrible period. Even though the world was crashing down on us, we had to leave our 2-room apartment, which had become a constant reminder of our pain. We moved in with my mom for 6 months. At that time, she had lost her husband and she was living with my siblings. It was a difficult time for all of us, my wife, mom, siblings, and me. The pressure was overwhelming, but we clung to each other for support. After 6 months of living with my mom, we finally moved into a 3-bedroom apartment at Upper Sakmomba Road in Benin City. It felt like a fresh start, but the challenges of raising 3 children and surviving on a limited income were still very real. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that became our foundation for everything. My wife's strength, even in the face of all that pain, was something I could never take for granted. Despite everything we went through, we made it work and kept fighting for a better life. In October 2013, my wife gave birth to another son. I was unprepared for it, and I sincerely didn't think we were in a financial position to have another child. But my wife was very excited about it. She said she was going to give birth to a boy to replace her lost son. She eventually had another son, but his birth still could not fill the hole of pain that King's death had created. In early 2016, I made a life-changing decision to relocate from Nigeria. With the help of my cousin Winston Imaswen, we relocated to Canada in July 2017. The process was not easy, but I saw it through. I borrowed a lot of money from different sources to achieve that dream. The first 3 years were incredibly tough. Canadian employers did not recognize my bachelor's degree from Nigeria and wanted Canadian experience to get a reasonable paying job. I worked a series of minimum wage jobs to make ends meet. Working in a cold room, driving a cab, taking care of elderly people, and doing security work. It was exhausting, but I kept my head down and focused on the bigger picture. All this while, I was still paying back the money I borrowed to bring my family to Canada. My wife couldn't work because she had to take care of 4 kids. Even though life was tough, it was way better than our life in Nigeria. I never stopped dreaming about what could be. I kept telling myself that one day, things would turn around. And in 2021, after years of struggles and setbacks, I had my first real breakthrough. One of my online businesses finally started making money. That moment felt like everything I worked for was finally paying off. It proved to me that persistence really does pay off. No matter how tough life gets, the key is to keep pushing forward, even when the road seems impossible. My journey into online business started in 2007. I have tried every online business you can think of. I have been scammed countless times, bought several useless courses, and I've spent thousands of dollars trying to make money online. But through all the failure, I kept going. And in 2021, my persistence finally paid off. I was able to resign from a security job, register my own company in Canada, and start working full-time online. At that time, I had just finished a 16-month diploma course in network security and management in the hope of getting a better job. But, however, I have never had to use it again. My dream has always been to be self-employed, Since then, I have never needed to update my resume or search for a job. I have been able to build a life where I work for myself on my own terms. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every sacrifice. That dream, which seemed so far away in the beginning, became a reality, and it continues to push me to keep me reaching higher. I'm sharing all of this with you to remind you of something very important. Your past does not define you. Even though I've skipped a lot of other important events in my life to keep down the length of this video, no matter what you have been through, no matter the setback, the mistakes, or the heartaches, your story is not over. It's easy to feel like the struggles you have faced have placed limits on your future, but that's simply not true. If I can rise from the struggles I have faced, losing everything, feeling lost, dealing with heartbreaks, then so can you. Your strength is in the ability to keep moving forward. No matter how tough the road may seem, you have the power to write your own story, to change the narrative, and create a future that's brighter than anything you could have imagined. Don't let where you have been determine where you are going. Your best days are still ahead of you, and it's never too late to start again. If I can do it, you too can. So let's rise together and unlock the incredible potentials within you. If you believe this was worth your time, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel to keep up with me as I share my life stories and lessons with you. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.